Hello and welcome to the Mount Ordeals Extreme Guide. This guide is going to cover every single mechanic from start to finish, and it's going to help you overcome the Archfiend himself. I'm your host Lucar, and welcome to the channel. Now before we dive right into this fight, we're going to have to set up a couple spots for everyone to be on the same page. And we're going to first start off with setting our clock spots and our light party stacks, and this will be very important for future mechanics. Finally, the last thing to prepare for this fight are partners. Partners are going to be indicated by the pizza slices in the arena shape itself. The closest people to the center should be the melee classes, while the classes farther away should be the range classes. Now with the prepping done, we're finally ready to begin the fight. Get your food and pots ready, we have an extreme to clear. As the fight starts, the boss will go into Inferno. Inferno is a raid wide. Make sure to shield and mitigate through this. Next up, the boss will jump straight to the middle and face east. He will then start to cast Glory to the Fire and set up a repeating mechanic throughout the rest of the phase. This mechanic is known as Ordeal of Purgation, and it will have a total of 6 unique rounds throughout the rest of this fight. Similar to normal, there is a limited amount of safe spots in the arena during this mechanic. Round 1 will go off and will have 2 out of 3 circles spinning. For this one, I recommend starting at the center and walking with the line till you see the endpoint. Adjust to the endpoint if it's a cone or rectangle attack. After the attack goes off, it goes directly into round 2. Round 2 will begin, and this is the easiest pattern to work with. To figure out the safe spot, you'll need to look at the center and find the V-shaped line. Hide behind the V-shaped lines, and that will always guarantee you the safe spot for round 2. Once round 2 finishes, Ordeals of Purgation will finish with it too. The boss will target the main tank with Shattering Heat. This is a tank buster that needs cooldowns and mitigation to survive. Make sure to stay away from others while tanking it. The boss will then go into Arch Inferno. 2 giant circle AoEs will appear, and the party needs to be separated into 2 groups. Light Party 1 will take the north side of the arena, while Group 2 will take the south side of the arena. The giant circle AoEs will start rotating clockwise during this mechanic. The party needs to rotate in the safe spot relative to where they are standing. There is 3 possible attacks that will go off in a random order every pull. First up, we have Stack. This is the easiest of the 3 attacks. All you have to do is get everyone all together and mitigate the damage. Second, you have Spread Markers that every member will get. The melees will stay close to the boss while range go far. The last attack is a 2-man stack group. If you see a blue circle on some members, this is it. You would need to stack 2 people during this mechanic. Melees will be up close to the boss while the range go far again. During these attacks, the boss will cleave the center, so make sure to avoid it by staying in the safe spot. Once the circle AoEs go off, you need to go back to assign clock spots. The clock spots can be relative to true north or relative to where the boss is facing. Group can decide this in the prep portion. The boss will then hit everyone with a small cone attack. Make sure not to stack and to mitigate and to heal up. Boss will cast Inferno again, which is the same raid wide from earlier. This will then be followed up with another set of rounds for Ordeals of Purgation. Round 3 is also fairly easy to understand. Similar to round 2, you will need to find the V in the center, but instead of going behind, you'll be in the front side this time. The safe spot will be in the inner part of the V between the middle cone and the cone connected to the V. There's only 2 possible versions of this attack, and they can both be solved like this. Next up comes round 4. One of the circles will be spinning around the arena in this round, and it will have 2 active lines that is straight across from one another. One line will always be straight, while one line will have a turn in it. In this round, only 1/8 of the arena is safe, so don't be too far in the pizza slice. To find the safe spot, you'll need to find whichever of the 2 active line has the straight line. You want to go away from that side of the arena. The second part to finding the safe spot comes from the circle spinning. It has arrows pointing which side it will turn. You want to follow these arrows and go to the pizza slice closest to the unsafe half of the arena. After round 4 has concluded, the boss will end Ordeals of Purgation. He will then become untargetable and teleport north of the arena. He will then summon adds in this phase with an Enrage meter. For this phase, everyone wants to start off with attacking the large ad in the middle first while avoiding the AoE pose. This ad will cast Ghastly Torch, which causes a bleed and will hurt the longer he is left alive. 2 members of the party will be tethered by the south ads and need to point out these tethers south and away from the other members. Next up, the northwest and northeast ad will also tether members, but this time the tank needs to pick up the tethers and take a tank buster, so make sure to heal and mitigate through this. This pattern of mechanics will continue repeating until it hits Enrage. I would recommend starting off with the middle, then working your way down to the south one, then picking your way up to the northwest and northeast ad, and then finally attacking the one fully north. This allows you to skip mechanics that will repeat constantly. Once the ads have been fully dealt with, the boss will become targetable again and will start casting Blazing Rapture. This is a strong raid wide that needs to be mitigated and shielded. The boss will do a couple autos and then begin to transform, similar to the normal version. Once the boss grows his wings, he will teleport to the center and begin his next mechanic, Flamespire Brand. All players will be applied Stinging Welt, which will cause a circle AoE to go off in every player. This debuff will go off in 15 seconds and everyone needs to spread in their ideal clock positions. Either all DPS or all supports can receive Blooming Welt at a given time. This is a flare mechanic. Players with this debuff need to stay away from the party due to its proximity damage and will go off after 12 seconds. 1 DPS or 1 support will receive Furious Welt. This is a stack mechanic. Players that don't have Blooming Welt need to stack to help mitigate this attack. This attack goes off after 12 seconds as well. This debuff should be taken around the center to minimize the stack damage. Nearly all the debuffs will go off around the same time, which is around 12 seconds. This will then be followed up with Stinging Welt, which will go off after 15 seconds. Now with all the debuffs out of the way, now we'll talk about what the boss is casting during this mechanic, Flame Rake. Flame Rake will be going off, which will target either all the cardinals or all the inner cardinals. The safe spot will be the opposite direction of where the Flame Rake is facing. The use of the arena design can give you an ideal spot where to stand. Once the Flame Rake goes off, people with certain debuffs will either need to go towards the center or away from the center, depending on your debuff. This will be an ideal time to pop Sprint to make your life easier avoiding the mechanic. Once everyone has done their stack or spread, they will need to spread again, ideally in your clock spots. During this mechanic there is a ton of damage going off, so make sure to heal and mitigate through it. The boss will then begin to cast Inferno again. Due to the boss being transformed, it's a different version of the attack. This attack gives everyone a circle AoE that needs to be spread that applies a bleed debuff that will last 15 seconds. Everyone should stay in their clock spots to avoid the circle AoEs. Once Inferno goes off, the boss will do 1 out of 2 possible attacks. He will either do Scalding Ring or Scalding Signal. For both attacks, everyone needs to stay in their clock spots. If it's Ring, you'll need to go towards the boss's hitbox to avoid getting hit. If it's Signal, you'll need to be out of the boss's hitbox to avoid the attack. Once the boss finishes casting the attack, he will summon clones that create a line AoE that will hit everyone. Depending on where you stand, it will affect the upcoming mechanic. Up next, the boss will then begin to cast Sweeping Immolation, which has 2 variations, and the 2 variations will be determined by his wings. Regardless of the variation, the boss will always do a frontal cleave that hits half of the arena. Make sure to stand in the south side of the boss after he turns towards one direction. The clones will also come back during this mechanic, and they're going to repeat their line AoEs from earlier, so be sure to stand in the pizza slices to avoid them. Now we'll talk about the 2 possible attacks that can go off during this mechanic. If his wing has 1 large flower, everyone needs to stack and mitigate the attack. If his wing has 3 small flowers, everyone needs to spread and mitigate the attack. Melee should be close to the boss, while range will be close to the edge. Once the clone dashes through the middle again, the stacker or spread will go off roughly around the same time, and the mechanic will be over. The boss will begin to cast Dual Fire. This is 2 tank busters that will go off towards the 2 people with the highest enmity. These tank busters will cleave a large portion of the arena, so I recommend taking this towards northwest and northeast so it avoids hitting others. After the tanks get hit by the tank busters, he will then power down to his normal form and he'll start setting up another set of puzzles. Round 5 will begin and we'll have only 1 active line that will go off, but with 2 circles that are rotating. Similar to round 1, trace the active line and avoid the cone or rectangle AoE. Round 6 will always have a cone and rectangle attack going off. This round will only have one circle going off and only 1/8 of it is safe. But no worries, there is a little trick on how to solve this. Once you find where the orange attack is going to go off, you'll need to be on the opposite side towards it. You will then need to be in the pizza slice closest to where the blue cone attack is coming from. Be sure to make it there and avoid the attack. You will then begin casting Inferno again. This is just the raid wipe from earlier, so there is no need to set up clock spots here. Once the raid wipe finishes, the boss will transform once again. The boss will then begin to cast Flamespire Claw. This will mark every player between 1 through 8. The boss will target everyone with a cleave in order. Each player wants to face them away and avoid others. While this is happening, 2 people will also be tethered during this mechanic. The tether will spawn on the 2 closest players. The tether will give you a debuff that once it stacks to 5, it will basically wipe the party. The tether will need to be passed to one another to avoid the debuff from stacking and killing the party. To resolve this mechanic, the odd numbers players will need to rotate in the northwest side while the even numbers will need to rotate northeast. The rest of the party will need to be south of the boss, while players with numbers 7 and 8 will need to be the ones closest to the boss. Once a player gets hit, they will need to pick up the tethers as they run towards the party. This will repeat until all players gets hit and the mechanic is fully done. Next up comes Inferno, but this time you'll need to be in clock spots to avoid the AoE circles, similar like earlier in the fight. The boss will then do Scalding Ring or Scalding Signal. The second time he does his attack will always be the opposite version from the first time. After this, he does another sweeping emulation. Move behind the boss and go to stack or spread position to solve this mechanic. The boss will cast another dual fire tank buster and then go into another 2 ordeals of purgation. From here on out, all future mechanics are just repeating mechanics from earlier in the fight. He then begins to cast Inferno, which enrages the party. And by this point, the boss will meet its end by the party. And with that comes the end of our guide. If you liked the video, make sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you so much and have a wonderful day.